Hey, welcome to Vue Screencasts, all things intermediate and advanced. Today, we're going to be creating a reusable pagination component. And so this component will be able to do all the things you would expect from a pagination component, and we'll be able to use it in a place like here where we have pagination happening at the API level, and situations like this, where we have pagination happening, where we have all the data at once, and the component itself is creating the splits in the data. This course does expand on the code that we built in the first 3 advanced component courses. So it will be useful if you've seen those, but it's not required. We will treat all the code created in those as a black box. Well, most of the code. And the stuff we do need to understand, I'll give a short explanation before we need to use it. But you should go back and watch those courses, just so you can learn the concepts involved. They're good courses. And they'll help a lot for the next course coming out next week, where we do use all the slot knowledge in order to create completely customizable pagination component using slots. All right, now, if you're wanting to follow along, which is highly recommended, then go ahead and go to the Advanced Component Slots GitHub repository, then go to the Pagination Start branch. I'll go ahead and provide a link to that in the description below. So click that link, get the repository, install everything, and you'll be ready to go. Also, as a final note before we get started, if you've been following along as these courses are released, you'll want to know about some updates. So GitHub changed how their API authentication works, and so I've updated the video in Advanced Components 2 in order to reflect that. So if you're using the old version and your GitHub API auth stops working, go check that out. And also in the Advanced Components 3 course, I've updated the video on debounce functionality. If you start with the Pagination Start branch, you'll have those updates. But if you've been keeping up on your own branch, then go ahead and check that out. All right, now we're ready to get started. So I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we're going to start at the Pagination Start branch. So go ahead and check out that branch if you're following along. And we're going to create a fake pagination mockup. So all the buttons are going to be there, but nothing is going to work until we connect it with our GitHub API in the next video. So where we're starting is pagination is basically the code we had at the end of part 3. And pagination plus is basically the code we had at the end of part 3 plus. And they've just been copied over so that the git commit history is more understandable when you're reviewing this course. Here's the code for that pagination route. We'll go ahead and make it so we don't see a lot of the code that is not relevant. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a mocked up pagination component. And we're going to be wrapping it around our table. And so let's go ahead and import that. And then create that component. And so what we'll be wanting is we're going to have a slot here. Later on, it's going to pass out the selected page, the selected number of items per page, and even an array of selected items. But for now, it's just going to be the place where we put our data table. And then above this is where we're going to put our mockup of the pagination row. So let's go ahead and make that. We'll make a pagination row, and then within it, let's go ahead and we're going to create a v4. And we're going to have it from a new array that's 10 items long. And we'll just get the item, which we'll discard, and then the index. And the reason we're doing it like this is, so we're just going to generate 10 items, and later on, that's going to be calculated based on how many pages we have. All right, and we're just going to put a button here that has the index, and we'll see what this looks like. So we'll go to our page, and we have a column of buttons starting at 0 and going to 9. Let's go ahead and change two things. First, we're going to change this to a span so that they're going to line up horizontally like that. And then we'll add a +1 here, so they'll start at 1. Next, we're going to want to improve the styling. So we're going to give these a class of pagination button. And then we're going to go ahead and paste in some style that I've created. And when we reload, you'll see that they look much better. So here's another look at the styling. We put in some padding around it. The font size is increased. There's a little margin between the buttons, and they've got some border radius, so they're a little rounded. And then the cursor is a pointer. We're going to update these styles with some active and disabled states in a couple videos, but this should be good enough for now. All right, so in addition to those, we're going to want previous and next buttons on either side. And so we'll just go ahead and have them as pagination buttons, but instead of having a number, you can say previous and next. So it could go like that, or if you wanted to, you could have little arrows like this. And if you want to have it not display as an error in your IDE, you can do and LT, and here you do, and then and GT, that's for the less than and greater than sign. So this is looking pretty good. We're about ready to go and connect it to our GitHub API. Let's go ahead and provide a little bit more separation first. So for our pagination row, we'll just have some padding of 5 pixels on the y-axis. There we go. Now we're ready to connect this to some actual data. Our goal in this video is to make the pagination component work with actual data from the GitHub API. But first, we're going to need to learn a little bit more about how the GitHub API works. So this is the endpoint that we've been calling. We've been acting as if this is all the repos, but it's actually as if it's page 1. So we can have page 2, and notice there's a different first repo. This is actually the second set of pages. And we can, as well, change the number of repos that are returned per page. So here we've done it to 2 instead of the default. Let's go ahead and hardcode these into our data loader. So we'll have page equals 2 and per page equals 5. And we'll see how that looks. There we go. We have only 5 displaying here, and the page is not the first one. And here we'll see that when we set it back to page 1, we'll be getting everything that we're used to seeing as the first 5. Our goal now is to make it so whenever we click one of these, it's going to show the page loaded like this. So page 3, the results here. And we can do that by making this page no longer hard-coded. We can have a page number. And where will we get that page number? Well, let's take our VS pagination and put it out here instead. We made a mistake by putting it directly over the table. And then we can put it here. And now that means that we can close down all of those, so it's even more abstract. We're just looking at VS pagination and the data loader. And what we're going to do is we're going to use scoped slots. So here we'll have our, let's call this slot the data slot. And we're going to get a page number out of here, which is what we'll be using right here. All right, and so do that, and now we'll need to make it so the page number is outputted from VS Pagination. So we'll start by having a data here, a data hash, which has page number, and the default's going to be 1. And here in the slot, we'll also be putting out page number, and we're going to name this data, so it matches up with the slot that we're using here, the template that we're using here. And now we'll want to make it so that whenever we click on one of these buttons, it's going to make the page number be the index +1. And so with that, we should, have it work. Our cannot read property org name of null. Okay, this is interesting. So we have a this.org name, which was working before, but now is not. Presumably because the this scope is changed now that we put it in a scoped slot. Anyways, if we take away the this dot, it'll start working again. All right, and we click these, and it's going to show the different pages. Perfect. We can also easily make the previous and next buttons work. So we will go here and we'll add a click to this. And we'll be setting the page number to the current page number -1. And we'll go and test that out. And we'll go here, we'll hit -1. And it appears to be working. We'll do the same thing for the next button, except we'll have the page number equal to the page number +1. Excellent. So we've got it working. Clicking the different buttons. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we change this back to 20 per page. uh-oh, it looks like there's nothing there. If we go back here, then we see 20. And what's happened is we have run out of repos. So 7, 8, 9, 10, or clicking the next button after that, they all give us nothing. So what we want to do is we want to figure out the number of repos and use that to calculate which buttons we should be showing. GitHub's API allows us to do that. So we'll go to /orgs/VueJS, or whatever organization name that we choose, and we'll see that they have public repos as a number. And so we'll use that number in order to calculate the total number of pages. So in this case, it would be 6 pages, because there's 5 that have 20 each. That goes to 100. And then the 6th page is just going to have 7. So we're going to start by hard-coding that number. And then we'll make it so the number of things here reflects that total items. Then we're going to make it so we can get the total number of items from the API, no matter what org name we put in. So here we're going to have a prop, which is total items. And the type is going to be a number. And then our it's going to be required for now. Then we're going to create a computed property, which will be number of pages. Number of pages. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be returning this dot total items divided by the number of items per page. And let's go ahead and hard code that at 20 for now. And that will be our total number of pages. And we'll want to have it as a whole number. And we'll actually want it, so let's say that there are 10 items and 20 per page. That's going to give us 0.5. And what we're going to want to return is 1. So we're going to use math.ceiling. All right, and now the number of pages is going to be used here. So let's see if that works. It appears to be working. So we are only showing the pages that have repos in them. Of course, if you go and change the org name, then you still got an issue because we have hard-coded the number. And so let's go ahead and make it so that is no longer hard-coded. What we're going to do there is we're going to take our data loader component and use it again. And you don't have to know anything about the internals of the data loader, just that you put in an endpoint. So we're going to take out all this and just leave it at the basic org/org name. And then you put in an auth token if needed. And then you have a template with the loaded template, and you get some data back from it. And that is all you need to know about that in order to use it. Good abstraction. And so here, the data we're getting back will be this. And so we're going to use public repos on it. So here, data.public repos. And see that. So VueJS, it's doing 6 pages. Vuetify.js, it's showing us 2 pages. Excellent. we've got our pagination working, but we do have a couple of communication issues with the user. So first, looking at this, you wouldn't know which page we're on. And so that's something pretty important for the user. And also, if you keep on hitting the Next button, eventually you're going to load a page that isn't there. And so what we're going to want to do is provide an active class to show which page you're on, and then disable the forward and back buttons when we're on the last and first page, respectively. Let's start with the active class. So first we'll apply active to all of these so we can make sure that the styling is working. Then we can add this styling. So the background is going to be a light gray, like this. And we'll also make it so the cursor is not a pointer. It is instead, we'll say auto. All right, so it doesn't look like it's something you can click, although clearly you still can. All right, so we only want to apply this to the one that is currently active. And so we will make this a dynamic property, and this one will always be pagination button, but then we'll only put in active if the page number is equal to the index plus 1. And if that's true, then we'll do active, otherwise just an empty string. And there we go. So now it's clearly marked which one is selected. Next, we'll put disabled on the previous and next buttons. So this is the disabled property. And we'll set this to disabled if the page number is less than or equal to 1. And then we'll see that it's working. This, well, we need to make it so the cursor is not a pointer, but you see it is disabled there, and not disabled when we go to a later page. So let's go ahead and put that in here in our CSS. So when disabled, our cursor is going to be auto. And we need to reload, and there we go. Now let's make that happen for the next button. And the only difference is we're going to be checking if the page number is greater than or equal to the number pages. And let's test that out. We'll reload and see it works. And now when we're on the last page, it is disabled. So there we go. These are just some small changes in our code, but they make our app much easier to use. Right now, we can change our page number, but whenever we reload our app, the page number goes back to 1. And for that matter, the org name that we're using also reverts to the default VueJS. In this video and the next one, we're going to change that. We're going to save it in query params. And this will make it so not only when we reload, it'll save, but so that it'll be easier to send where you are to others. So we're going to have the page number query param, and we'll also have the org name query param. Let's start with the page number. So here we have page number 3, and then in our pagination component, we'll want to be able to pick up that page number. And so we can go this dot route dot query dot page number, and then we'll have a default of 1. Let's reload, and we'll see that it's picking that up. Now we'll need to make it so that when we click on a different page, it'll change the page number in the query param. Let's start by making this into an actual method, because otherwise we're going to have to do it in all 3 places, repeating code. So we'll call it change page number, and then we'll take in the value. And here we will create a methods hash and change page number. We'll take in the new page number, and then we'll just set page number to the new page number, and that will replicate what we had before. We'll double check to see that it's working. Good. And now we need to set the query param. So what we'll do here is we're going to get our route, and we're going to push a new state on it. So the path is going to be the current path, because remember, this needs to be able to be used in multiple places, so we can't hard code anything there. Then the query will have page number be the new page number. And let's go ahead and check to see how this is working. So we're going to click on another page, and All right, so this .route.push is not a function. I think here we have to do the router. All right, so router and route are different things. And now it's working. Now let's make it work for the next and previous buttons. And to do that, we just need to replace this with change page number. All right, it feels good to abstract things. We'll reload, and so we've got a mix of string and number. So page number here is a string, and we're adding 1 to it. So we are going to have to do something like this. Or actually, let's go ahead and do it here. And of course, we don't want page number 51. Good. And let's try it here without, just to make sure that, it goes to page 1 correctly, and it does. We can also see that it works with the previous and next buttons, as well as clicking on a button. This is our first query parameter. In the next video, we're going to add a second query parameter for the org name, and we'll see the slightly different use case, text input instead of some buttons, and the complications that arise when using multiple query params. So we have the query param for page number working. Now we want to make it so we can have our org name also be defined in a query param. You can see it's not working yet, but we can use what we learned last time to make this a reality. So here we'll do this.route.query.orgname, and then we'll have the default of VueJS. And here we're in the data definition, defining org name. So if we save this, then there we go. It will use whatever is in the org name query param. And if we don't have a query param, then it'll default to VueJS. Now we want to make it so whenever we type here in the input, it'll change whatever is in the query param. We have a couple options. We could switch this away from using vModel and instead use value and input. But if we want to keep on using vModel instead of using an event, we can just add a watch hash here, and we'll watch the org name. And we'll have the new org name here. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our router, and we're going to push so we're going to have the path, which is this.route.path. And then we're going to have our query. And for this, we're going to have the org name equal to the new org name. So let's see if this is working. So there we go. Notice that it changed up here, and it changed every time that we make a change in the input. This doesn't need to be debounced like the other ones because it's not making an API call every time. I mean, it is if we type slow enough, but if we type quickly, you'll see that there were no more missed API calls there. So we've got this working, and everything's great, right? Let's go to the next page. Uh-oh. So the query param here has disappeared. So when we reload, it's going to be in the VueJS organization. That's because in change page number here, we are setting the new query hash, and we're only setting page number when we also want to be setting org name. And so there are a couple things we could do. We could set the org name directly. So if we do that, then you'll see that it's keeping our org name when we're going between pages. However, what if there are other query params and we need to keep those as well? So we don't want to have to go in and update this every single time that we add a new query param. So what we can do is we can do this. So basically we're taking everything on the old query and we're splatting it out here. We're destructuring it. And then we are overwriting the page number if it's there. So we'll reload and we'll see we're still on that page, and there we go. This is working correctly, and the page number is changing while the org name is staying the same. Note that it's very important that this comes first and not last, because if you have it last, then it's not going to change because the previous page number will override it. So I mean, yeah, it changes here, but not in the query params. So you reload back to 1. So yeah, always have it first and not last. Now your first thought may be, all right, cool, let's do this for pagination. And we definitely want to do something like that for pagination, but let's look at what a naive implementation does. So cool, we've got this, that's working. We go to VueJS, go to page 6, and then we go back to Quasar Framework, and we are still on page 6. We do not want that. As a matter of fact, even if we were on page 3, we probably don't want to start on page 3 because we're in a completely new set of items. And so we'll keep this here because we want it for when we add more query params. But we'll put the page number hard-coded as 1. And now when we change, we'll go back to 1 every time. So that is the major gotcha for using multiple query params and the way to fix it. All right, so we've got this part of pagination working, and this could be a complete feature, but let's go ahead and add a little something extra. Let's make it so that we can change the number of items on a page easily. So to do that, let's go ahead and add another row up here, another row of buttons. And these buttons will have, let's say, 5, 10, 25, and 50. And when you click it, it changes the number of items in a page. So what we'll do is we'll have a v4 here. And for the per page, actually, we shouldn't use that because we're already using it down here and they'll conflict. So let's call it a per page option. And in an array of 5, 10, 25, and 50. And then our key will be per page option. All right, and that'll let us have a button which displays the per page option. And it'll be doing a lot more than just display, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, so we've got our buttons here, and they don't do anything yet, and they're also not styled. Let's get them styled. So we could call them a pagination button, but let's go ahead and call them a per page button, just in case we want to add differential styles later. And now we can see they're showing up as we want, and they will also get the active style once we start applying that class. Let's go ahead and take the first step towards that by having a click event for them. And that click event, we're going to go ahead and start with it calling out to a function, and we'll call it change per page. And we'll send in the per page option. And now we need to go and create that function, that method. All right, so the first part is easy, changing per page here. And let's go ahead and we'll start with just doing that. And we will go ahead and put the per page on our data slot. And that means that we can now get per page here, or let's call it items per page, because I think that's more descriptive. All right, and here we can now put in the items per page instead of hard coding 20. Let's go ahead and see if that works. It appears that it does. Now let's add okay, this looks like it's not working, but if we go here, it definitely is. All right. Now let's add the active class and a query param. The active class is easy. We just turn this into a dynamic class array. And then if per page option is equal to per page, then it shows active. And we can see that that's working correctly. Then we need to change our change per page, and we'll add something similar to this. So we will start with just doing this and changing it like this. And that'll work for quite a few situations. So we can change it here, and we'll see that the per page up here is changing. And if we reload, then it's still staying up here, but it's not being grabbed correctly because we have our per page here of 20. So let's go ahead and get this $route.query.perPage with 20 as a default. And now we can see that it's working as expected. So this is looking pretty good, but there is one issue. So let's say we go to page 7 here, and then we change the number of items per page. It's still going to stay on page 7. So we just need to add a little bit of logic here in our change per page method. We need the total number of pages that there will be after we make this change. But we can't just call number pages because we need time for these changes to percolate. And so we'll define something called new number pages. And we're just going to take this and we'll use the new per page. And then if the new number of pages is less than or equal to the current page, so this dot page number, then we'll set this dot page number to the new number of pages. And with that, we'll see that it appears to be setting correctly here, but it's not setting correctly in our query params. So we can make sure that happens by setting our page number equal to this dot page number explicitly in these query params. All right, let's save that and see if it works. And there we go. The page number has changed. And you'll notice that it goes down if it needs to go down. If you go lower, then it doesn't change the page number. It doesn't always put it in the last one. So this is working as expected. All right, and if we try to put in another organization, you'll see that it keeps the org name, but changes the page number. And that is how we can change the number of items displayed per page. This is quite a bit of code, but aside from this, it's all repeats of concepts that we've used before in this course. So that was a good review and summation of what we've learned so far. And in the next video, we're going to learn how to apply all of this and the pagination component to a slightly different situation. One where we already have all the data downloaded. So we've got our pagination working pretty well. We can change the number of items. We're getting per page. We can change the page, and it's all saved in our query params. And this is how it looks. So we take in the total number of items. We and then we can spit out the page number and items per page to be used elsewhere. And in this case, that elsewhere is in this endpoint. However, there are lots of situations where we would just want to feed in an items array and then get out the paginated items. Here is one such use case. So this is getting a list of courses from my API, and it's getting all of the courses at once. So let's see if we can make our VS Pagination component work in that instance. So first, let's import it and register it as a component, and then we'll want to use it within the data loader because we are going to need the data in order to tell us the number of items. All right, so our total items here will be data.data.length. Remember the form of this, and then our items array that will feed in will be this. And then here we'll get our template, and it'll be data, and we'll get out paginated items. And we'll feed our paginated items into the VS table. Now, of course, none of that will work yet, but we'll get a version of it up really quick. So we'll want a items prop. So we'll make it items here. Type is going to be an array, and required is false. Let's actually go ahead and give it a default of an empty array. All right, and then we have our paginated items computed property. And for now, let's just return the items. We're going to actually paginate that in a second. And then here we will put our paginated items out in the data array. All right, so let's see if that's working. All right, it is displaying the 2 rows of paginated buttons, so the actual number and the per page. And it's even adjusting the number of buttons here based on the number of items per page. But it's not yet adjusting the items that are shown. We can change that by changing the paginated items computed property. So we are going to need per page, and we're also going to need the current page number. And if we multiply those together, then that's going to be the endpoint of where we want to slice things. So we'll call this end, and we're going to take this .items, and we're going to slice it. And how slicing works is you put in the start index and then the end index, and it'll grab the portion in between. So we have our end, and then we can have our end minus this dot per page. And that should get us the correct items. All right, let's reload, and we'll see that we are getting the correct number per page. And this seems to be working correctly. So we only added a couple of lines of code to VS Pagination, but we are able to add a whole nother use case, that where we take the items array directly and return the paginated items, instead of returning just the page number and items per page, to be used in a different algorithm to pull the data. And the way we use it is very similar. The difference is that we are going to be within the data loader because we want the data to already be loaded. And then we'll feed in the items array and get back the paginated items array. And of course, all the features that we had created before are still working. And that is our course. We have created a reusable and very feature-rich pagination component that can be used both with data that is paginated elsewhere, such as an API, and with data that is all in one pre-existing array that we can paginate just for purely display purposes. If you want to check out the code, you can go to the Pagination branch of the Advanced Component Slots GitHub repo, and then look at the various commits. You could also create a pull request of this against the Pagination Start branch, and that will show all of the changes that we've made throughout this course. Of course, we are not quite yet done with the pagination component because there is, as of yet, not a way for our users of this component to customize how it looks. And so that's what we're going to be doing in the next course. We're going to be using slots in order to make a completely customizable pagination component.